Hey everybody, I'm the Drink Pro, and today I'm drinking Stagg Jr. Batch 14. What's up everybody, Drink Pro here with you yet again. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and for liking, subscribing, sharing with your friends, joining the Patreon. Check me out on any social media platform at The Drink Pro / The Drink Pro. Only one that's a little different is TikTok, but thank you all for supporting me and being a part of this. It's been a blast to make these videos, and I'm glad that you guys are helping me continue to do it. Today, I'm trying out the most recent edition of the Stagg Jr. lineup, Batch 14. Now, I will say this bottle on the table is not Batch 14. This is a bottle I just happen to have sitting around. If you're curious which batch you have, the only way to actually really tell on the bottles is to look down here at the proof. The proof will let you know. There are charts online that are relatively easily available that will tell you whether or not you've got a batch 14 or a batch 10 or a batch 12 or what have you. But I know I've got batch 14 because this sample is at 130.2 proof. Big shout out to Henry Cervantes for providing this to me. I hope I'm saying that name right. If not, let me know. Henry also provided me some really cool other things that I hope to pepper in the future. And he was generous enough to provide me 2 different ounce samples of the Stagg Jr. batch 14. Why? Initially, the idea, I think, was to give me a sample to enjoy in my own time and a sample to make a video of, but I kind of can't help myself, so I'm making a sample video out of this one, and the other one's going to go into a lineup where I try every single Stagg Jr. batch that has ever been made. Batches 1 through 14. Hopefully I can get it done before 15 comes out, because that's going to be a mess, sampling 14 different barrel-strength whiskeys from Stagg Jr. Really, the whole point of that is to figure out which one I think is the best, which is my favorite, pull some interesting flavor notes out of each of them. I only have a couple of batches of it, though, so I've been relying on you guys, the fans, to provide me with what I need for this. And I only have 3 batches I'm missing. That's batch 1, batch 7, and 8. I'll go ahead and give you the proof so you know. If you see a proof statement on your bottle, you don't know if it's the right one for me or not, this will help. Batch 1 is 134.4 proof, batch 7 is 130 proof, and batch 8 is 129.5 proof. If you have any of those batches and are willing to share an ounce or two with me, please reach out, let me know. It would be immensely appreciated. Back to Stagg Jr. Now, I've done the Stagg Jr. review very early on in my YouTube career, but I wanted to revisit it mainly because this new batch is certainly going to be different, and I want to know how it compares to others. I think people tend to watch these videos and go, is this something I would like? Is this something I'll be able to find? I hope to answer those questions. It's going to be harder to find this one, I will say that, because I haven't been able to find a bottle, hence the sample. But I do think that there was a bad reputation built initially in the Stagg Jr. line that some people feel like it's gotten away from those negative comments early on. I think initial batches were sort of seen as a little too aggressive and bombastic and weren't as refined as they might have wanted them. Some of that probably comes from the age. George T. Stagg is actually between 14 and 16 years typically, whereas Stagg Jr. is a much younger whiskey. It's between 7 and 9 years typically. And while it's being presented at barrel strength, just like its older cousin here, it's going to be a little harsher and a little bit more aggressive because of the younger age. Now, Stagg Jr. was originally announced in 2013 with a price point around $50. I think the MSRP now is $60, but it's relatively difficult to find batches at those price points. They kind of fly off the shelf, so your best bet is probably in a secondary market where it's going to look a lot higher, probably in the $150 range. I've seen it as high as. Maybe even more than that anymore. I'm trying to not look at the secondary prices because it just kind of gives me a headache. So one more little fun fact while I pour this sample. There are different proof points for each edition of George T. Stagg Jr., but they stay within a pretty close range. The highest proof Stagg Jr. thus far was at 67.2%. The lowest was 63.2%. The highest was actually batch 1, the lowest was batch 10. Now that I've got my whiskey here poured, oh, it smells so good, guys. I'm gonna spend a little bit of time with this one. I always find this really nice, rich cherry note in pretty much every Stagg Jr. I've tried. This one doesn't seem to be any exception. The nose, I get this wonderful cherry. I get a little bit of cinnamon. There definitely is still that vanilla quality, but it's taking a back seat to those fruitier cherry notes and that sort of baking spice quality. I'm actually getting a lot of berry on this one. I get the cherry, but I'm also probably getting like a currant, maybe a blueberry as well. I actually get a hint of rose on this one. That's not a note I pull off very often, especially from the Stagg batches, but I like it in this. There's a hint of this kind of floral, herbal vibe that is subtle enough it's not overpowering or overwhelming. It doesn't take me too far out of the Stagg mindset. I think Stagg Jr. really, in some ways, mimics some of the profile qualities of George T. Stagg, or at least it's supposed to. That's another reason people probably didn't like it as much early on, is from what I've read at least. I haven't tried them yet, but from what I've read, some of the very early batches didn't really taste like Stagg. They almost reminded people of a Buffalo Trace product that had been amped up in proof. Just to be clear, when I say Buffalo Trace product, I mean literally the Buffalo Trace bottle, like these on the shelf. They are a Buffalo Trace product. All of them. All the Staggs. All of them. I'm actually getting a little bit of sweet corn on this. That's kind of fun. And as I let it rest and spend some more time with it on the nose, the vanilla is becoming sharper. I'm getting more like a vanilla extract quality. And it's sort of overtaking the cherry a little bit. This sweet creme brulee caramel vibe is starting to show up. It's more caramel than creme brulee. It's not very creamy, I suppose, but that sweet, sugary beautifulness. I'm really enjoying it on the nose. I get just a hint of cedar wood as well. This is definitely going to be a woodier whiskey than your average whiskey at this age point, but it's relatively quiet on the nose. It doesn't really smell like oak to me. I get a lot more a little black pepper. I get a lot more of the cherry, the vanilla, a little black pepper, a lot of cinnamon. Oh, I honestly almost get like a tropical fruit, like a coconut or a mango. That's really weird for me. I don't usually get that in this stuff. I can't wait. I'm going to go ahead and try it. Let's give it a taste. Oh, the Kentucky hug on Stagg just really stands out. I can just feel that warmth all the way down my chest. Nice, long, lingering woodiness. Almost a peanuttiness on the finish here. That's kind of unusual for me. I didn't usually get that. It was more astringent oak in other Stagg batches. Buttery. It's really buttery, caramel, sweet in the front. Mid-palate, you get this nuttiness and this woodiness. There's a definite cedar note for me. I get the oak, but I also get the cedar flavor, which is unusual. Butter pecan that sort of showed up near the end of my nosing really is standing out in the palate, especially in the mid-palate. I get this initial hit of sweet. It's not really a sharp, sugary sweetness. It's more like a rich, buttery caramel sweetness. And then the pecan comes in. It's almost like butter pecan ice cream, except a little less creamy. Then you get the wood starting to show up. And then as the finish transitions, you get into the wood more and more. You start to feel the Kentucky hug and the burn. There's not really a pepper tingle, though. It's just like a classic high alcohol burn that disappears pretty quickly and then leaves you with this nice woody thing going on in the finish. And that kind of reminds me a lot of peanut. It's a little bit Booker's-esque in a way. And going back to the nose after tasting it, I definitely can smell that cherry. That cherry keeps popping out, which is funny to me because I don't taste it at all. The fruitiness is not on the palate like it is on the nose. I think that's my fourth taste, maybe my third, but the vanilla really started to show up in the front of the palate. That sweetness is becoming creamier and more lively. And then the finish, it's kind of weird. The mid-palate is sort of disappearing. My first taste, the mid-palate was really broad and significant and powerful. And now I'm starting to get into this like more predominant sweet creaminess in the front end, and then still have that long lingering woodiness. The peanuts sort of disappearing, and the mid-palate nuts are sort of disappearing. The nuts are gone. What happened to the nuts? It's a very good pour. It's a very classic bourbon profile in my mind. I think this is like a classic bourbon drinker's bourbon. Somebody gave me shit about this on YouTube, as they probably should have. Usually I kind of say, go fuck yourself to most of the haters. But made a very good point, random YouTube commenter, that I should use water and open up the whiskey a little bit and see how that affects it in a positive or a negative way. Well, I will do that. Yeah, that sweetness and the cinnamon really start to pop. The cherry kind of dissipates again. The baking spices really open up when I added a touch of water. It becomes much more baking spice predominant on the nose. And honestly, the floral notes come out more. I mean, I still have a hint of that sweet berry quality, but it's pretty subtle. The floral notes become more prominent, and it almost becomes like a honeysuckle, this sort of sweet floral quality. Let's go ahead and taste it with a little water added. I mean, I find this a lot with whiskey. when you add water, it opens up on the nose, but then the palate becomes just sort of more boring. I don't think that's always true, for all whiskeys and not for all palates, but for my personal palate, there aren't very many whiskeys that I find that get better when you add a couple of drops of water on the palate. A lot of them might smell better, might open up. There are some out there that exist, but I'd rather drink this one straight. And I'll tell you what, I mean, this is a great whiskey. If you can find this one on the shelf, I highly recommend buying it. Stagg Jr. Batch 14. Thanks so much to Henry for providing me the sample. I'm out of whiskey darn near, but I have more reviews to shoot, so you all keep drinking like professionals. Cheers.